These results are unusual. There is no right or wrong answer to, should I rank #1 for my favorite keyword? We found a few things, and the client decided to stop the experiment only after about a month and a half or 2 months, instead of running it until we got 5 conversions like I recommended. Being the most competitive, the most seen is not always the most profitable for your business, which is interesting. This is something I've suspected for a long while. This is why I always say, there is no right or wrong answer to that question. You have to do an experiment. Hi, Regina here at Solutions 8. 2 months ago, I made a video. It was called, should I rank first for my #1 keyword? This was a question that kept coming up. And in that video, I was setting up an experiment, talking about all the pros and cons of the experiment. So now that the experiment that I built is done, I wanted to show you guys the results. So that's why you're here with me today. I'm going to try to make it as fast as possible. The results were pretty interesting. Not what I expected, to be honest. So we're going to dive into that in just a second. Before I go in, if you haven't seen the previous video, I will link to it in the description. So check that out. I'll just kind of sum up that video in case you don't have the time to watch both videos. In that video, I talk about all the pros and cons of running an experiment. You know, clients are often saying, hey, I just want to show up first for this specific keyword because this is the keyword that explains what we sell. And so I want to be the first at the top of the page, absolute top. And so, you know, I'm always like, okay, well, we can test it out. But depending on the cost per click and your budget, it could take many, many, many months to get a good average and to really be able to see whether it is more profitable to be at the top of the page. Obviously, being at the top of the page costs more, but theoretically, your cost per click should be higher and your conversion rate should be higher because you're, being the first for your ad should get the people that are kind of more ready to buy. They're willing to click on an ad, which means, you know, they're kind of just looking for a service. And they're typically like a more high quality lead than someone who has been perusing all the search results in Google Ads, sort of maybe wanting to learn about something and then accidentally stumbles across your ad, right? A smaller percentage of those bottom of the page searchers are going to be actually ready and willing to buy and willing to pay what you're selling. So, all right, so let's dive in. I will show you the results of this experiment. And I just want to preface this by saying these results are unusual. There is no right or wrong answer to, should I rank #1 for my favorite keyword? The industry, the seasonality, the amount of competitors bidding on that specific keyword at that given moment, your ad copy, everything can shift the results one way or the other. And so I always just recommend running a quick experiment before you decide to make a big decision about your overall strategy. In this case, I told the client, unfortunately, because of his budget, being so low and because of the cost per click in his industry, he offers SEO services. So his cost per click is pretty high because that's a high ticket item, highly competitive industry. So, you know, you can kind of take your budget, divide it by the cost per click and, you know, kind of figure out how long is it going to take you before you get, 5 conversions in the experiment so that you can kind of see the average cost per conversion. Right? So it's going to take months, I told him. So I'm going to head over to the experiment down here on the left. It's called Absolute Top Impression Share. And for SEO Agency keywords, that's what it was called. All right. So what happened was right away, we found a few things, and the client decided to stop the experiment only after about a month and a half or 2 months, instead of running it until we got 5 conversions like I recommended. And it's understandable, and I'll explain why.
This is not a glitch. I'm interrupting the video you're watching because I need to remind you that I'm always looking for people to join our team. So if you're passionate about Google Ads and you want to work with the best Google Ads agency on the planet, please go to so8.com/apply. Speaking of working with the best Google Ads agency on the planet, if you're having trouble with Google Ads and you want professional help, that's what we do. You can go to so8.com, that's SOL8.com, to apply for your free, no obligation action plan. And if I've given you any level of value at all, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. That's how we juice the YouTube algorithm so they actually know that I know what I'm talking about. If you have questions, comments, concerns, or confessions, hit me below in the comments. And now, back to your regularly scheduled program.
So here you can see the base versus the trial. So absolute top. So the bidding strategy was different in this one. We told it to just target top of the page for this specific keyword no matter what. And we told it to use 40% of the budget. Now, first thing we notice is it didn't use 40% of the budget. It used about 25% of the budget, which is interesting. This is something I've suspected for a long while, because when you're paying more per click, it's just harder. It seems to be harder for the algorithm to do the budget pacing. We found that out when in our own, management, we have to adjust the budgets a lot throughout the month to try to spend the right amount, increasing it when it falls behind, like in this case. So it struggles because, it spends its entire daily budget on one click, and then it's out of money and it misses a bunch of clicks for the rest of the day. And then it has to wait until it gathers enough daily spend to get the next click. So it's just harder, more bumpy for the algorithm. So that was a little frustrating. It only spent 25% of the budget, not 40. Here was interesting. So as you can see, the cost per click is more, which we expected. That's always the case when you're trying to be absolute top of the page. And then the click-through rate was lower, which was highly unusual. I mean, usually when you're at the absolute top of the page, click-through rate is higher. This is why I always say there is no right or wrong answer to that question. You have to do an experiment. There could be some oddity that's different from the norm, and one metric will throw off the bottom line metric and sway it into the opposite direction, right? So cost per click being lower, weird. Similarly, another thing that's weird, conversion rate was lower. Now, granted, this only ran for $1,000, so we don't have any averages. It only got one conversion, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, cost per conversion was significantly higher for the experiment than it was for the regular. And the client said, scrap the project. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. So our original strategy of kind of letting it bid lower down on the page often, and maybe sometimes we're at the top of the page. In fact, I can go back to the main homepage and see how often we're at the top. Let me show you. Absolute top of the page. Search absolute. Where is it? Search top. Okay, so we're gonna apply these columns and view. Here we go. Okay, so for this campaign, we're at the top of the page 21% of the time, absolute top of the page only 13% of the time. And if we look at, here we go, I had to show all ad groups. If we look at the SEO, SEO Agency keywords, which is the one we were experimenting against, you can see that it is absolute top of the page 37% of the time. Search absolute top. Oh, that's search lost. Search absolute top impression share only 10% of the time. And then the top of the page, which doesn't mean absolute top, but just before the organic. So somewhere in the top 3 or 4, then it's 18% of the time. So that's interesting. It's actually still at the top of the page more often than it's at the absolute top, but most of our impressions don't even show up before the organic search results, and yet it performs better than showing up at the top. So just interesting to see what's going on there. I mean, being the most competitive, the most seen is not always the most profitable for your business. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi everyone, Regina here at Solutions 8. I wanted to talk to you guys about how to use Performance Max and make it work for you, even if you are a small business working with a small budget. I'm talking under 5K.